Today we are comparing probabilities of simple events. Okay, Sally rolls a number cube with 6 equally likely outcomes, 1 through 6, 40 times. Okay, Douglas randomly selects one ticket from a bag that contains an equal number of tickets numbered 1 through 6. He replaces the ticket and selects it again. Douglas repeats his experiment 40 times. Each student records their results in a frequency bar graph. Which student's graph best represents the results that can be expected from each experiment? So because each number is equally likely of being drawn, 1 out of the 6, Douglas's has most of them are very similarly drawn, whereas Sally's has these differences, these big differences of how often different numbers are drawn. So I would say Douglas's is more representative of what you would expect from this experiment because each number is expected to have the same number of outcomes, 1 out of 6. Okay, so because Douglas's, they're all similar in height, more similar in height, I would expect his to be more accurate. Okay, so when you're looking at graphs like this, you're figuring out, okay, which one most represents what the situation calls for. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Okay, this one is spinners. Okay, so Dean and Nicole each spin their respective spinners shown 80 times. They both record their results in a frequency bar graph. Neither Dean nor Nicole wrote their name on their graph. Which graph represents the results that can be expected from Dean's experiment versus Nicole's? Okay, so first thing I would notice here is that Dean's has all of his spaces equally distributed. So the numbers 1 through 8 would be more evenly drawn. And I think that student 1 here is a little more similar to that. Whereas you can see if I draw a line through this student, they're much further from that line above and below. Okay, so Nicole's, see how the 5 is larger than some of the other numbers. The 2 is larger. The 2 and the 2 maybe looks even larger than the 5, and the 6 is also larger. And you can see the 2, the 5, and the 6 were actually landed on more often than some of the other numbers. So I would think this would belong to Nicole, and again, this would belong to Dean. Okay, you can try number 3 on your own. Okay, let's try number 4 together here. 2 experiments are conducted and their results are recorded in a frequency bar graph, which best represents the results that can be expected from experiment 1 versus experiment 2. Experiment 1 says a number queued with the numbers 1 through 4 is rolled 30 times. Okay, so again, equally likely to get the number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, a card is randomly selected from a bag containing the following. So 4 cards labeled 1, 4 cards labeled 2, 1 card labeled 3, and 6 cards labeled 4. So I would say the 6 or the 4 was probably drawn most often because there's most of them. The 1 was labeled, or the 3 was drawn least often because there was only 1. And I would say graph 1 goes with experiment 2 because the 3 was the least. Okay, and again, graph 2, these are much closer to each other, each of them. There's not a big discrepancy between the heights of the bars as much. So I think this one would go with experiment 1. You can try number 5 on your own there. Number 6, number 7, and then here's another one like the one we just did.